the Mental Health and Addiction podcast, otherwise known as The Map, where it's okay to ask for directions. I'm Kimberly Walsh of Brady's Landing, sober home for women on the Cape, and my partners in crime are Andy Bernstein and Kristen Perry Long. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi.
We're also being streamed live at Foxboro Cable Access TV with Michael Weber at the helm. So we're going to have a great show for you guys today. We're going to meet David Jensen, who is a former U.S. Olympic hockey player, also an NHL hockey veteran. And later in the show, we have Sadie Bernero joining us, who is an author. So before we get started, why don't we check in and see how we're all doing? How's everybody doing with the pandemic, etc.?
I'm hanging. I'm good. I'm better.
Yeah?
Yeah, I feel better. You know what? If you put it all into perspective, right? It's like we could be in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could be in New York. We could have this thing. You see Chris Cuomo has it. You Boris Johnson. So for me, I'm trying to keep it all in perspective and say, it's not ideal, but you know what? It could always be worse, right?
Yeah, it could be a lot worse. People are in Massachusetts, though, are starting to die. Like, it's starting to happen. Our numbers are starting to go up, and that really scares me. It scares me for a bunch of reasons. I talk to a lot of people that are in recovery, and they're really starting to struggle. The honeymoon of being quarantined has kind of worn off, and the realization has started to really set in, and it's not fun anymore. And people are really struggling, and that really concerns me. I've put so many people into treatment in the last 5 days. It's insane to me how many people I've put into treatment. And the treatment centers in the state of Massachusetts, at least, are full. Like full.
Are they really?
Yeah. Like they're full. They're not just like, oh, we're at 60%. They're at 110%, busting at the seams. It's crazy.
That makes sense, though. I mean, if you're isolated, which is such a big problem with addiction, and then it's like, how couldn't you, as a way to cope? It's only, it seems like a natural thing, right?
Absolutely. And that's a key to people in recovery is connection is like the foundation of the 12-step program. We connect through other people. We go to meetings. We hug one another. We have this connection. That's what keeps us sober. And I've heard people in sober homes dropping like flies. It's a scary state of affairs. We've got to, they've got to use the Zoom meetings, but it's kind of not the same, So it's something to be cautious about.
Yeah, the Zoom meetings have kind of worn off. Like they're not fun anymore. They're getting hacked.
Yeah.
Again, the honeymoon effect is sort of, I've got people that are like, hey, we're going to have a physical meeting and, go for it, but respect social distancing, do it outside. As much as you want to give each other a hug or whatever, hold off. And, I have a kid that checks in with me daily, and he did it. And he was like, we only invited 15 people to keep it small. But
right.
Word got out, and before they knew it, they had 45 people at that meeting. And it shows you that need for the physical aspect of being able to be together.
Yeah. And it's weird. So tonight it's Passover. I've been invited to go to 2 Seders, and one's in Pittsburgh with my family in Pittsburgh, and the other is here in Mansfield. And so that's kind of interesting because I wouldn't go if, on a normal occasion, I probably wouldn't, but I'm here, it's not a big time commitment. So I'm going to go. I'm not saying it's ideal situation, but to try to find a positive in all this, mean, I think you have to try to find some kind of positive, right? Or no?
Absolutely. It's the key, I think.
Power of positivity, power of prayer, power of positivity. It's hard though. It's hard.
Yeah, Kristen and I were just talking about it yesterday, how it's difficult. It's difficult to remember something as simple as the Serenity Prayer. When you're in a tough time, you kind of tend to stay in a bad spot. Until something affects you and bumps you out of that place, which is hard. It's hard to do. It's I feel for so many people. All you can do is give it your best shot and keep connected on the phone or on Zoom. We have to stay connected somehow, and know that this too shall pass. Right?
What are some of the things that you guys are telling people who you interact with? I know for me, I talk to people in, friends, and I try to not take it on myself, because everybody's in a different phase of life. So I'll talk to some people who are really, really struggling, and I have a tendency to take on their stuff, which affects me. So I'm trying to just listen. But I guess my question for you guys is how are you dealing with people? How do you maintain your inner strength when you talk to other people?
So I don't know. I mean, it depends on who you're talking to. If I'm talking to a mother, a couple of nights ago, I was on the phone with a family. Their daughter was in another state, and they were here. They couldn't go and get her for obvious reasons, and so tried to remind them of, being honest and talking about the recovery that she had. She relapsed, unfortunately, but it was okay. I'm like, she was okay. She was open to help, focus on those things instead of all the things that you can't control. Like, I can't get there. It's 10 o'clock at night. I can't get to another state that's 1,500 miles away. But what I can do is I can talk to her on the telephone. I can reach out and ask for help, which the family did. And hopefully that help is going to help navigate their loved one to wherever it is that they go. So it's a lot of redirection. It really is. You just have to redirect and keep redirecting until you find that right path that works for them.
Right.
Well, that's a great segue, because we actually do have someone who has been making a difference working with people in sobriety for a number of years, David Jensen. And, it's time to let's introduce him, because he's sitting there in a little box. Hopefully his mic is on. Dave, you there?
Is he muted?
I think he's muted.
It's not muted. Dave, can you hear us?
I spy with my little eye the bridge in California.
I know, right?
Oh, he's connecting to his audio. Okay.
There he goes. Okay.
Here he goes. Dave Jensen.
Nope. Can't hear you, buddy.
Can't hear you. There he goes. Wait, no.
Anyway, I'll get him started. Before he comes in. So Dave is actually a former NHL player, played in the 1984 U.S. Olympics. He attended Belmont High School and Lawrence Academy, and is widely regarded as one of the top schoolboy players in New England history. And in 1984, he teamed up with Pat LaFontaine and Eddie Olczyk on the famed diaper line as a key member of the 1984 U.S. Olympic team. And he was a key part of that team, and he went on to play in the NHL. He played for the Hartford Whalers, the Caps, and Bruins organizations, and he was inducted into the Mass Hockey Hall of Fame. He's also been in sobriety, and we're happy to have him on to tell his story and what he's doing today. How are you, my friend?
Hey, great to see Andy. Great to meet all of you. Sorry about the audio there. I'm on an iPad and it's a little primitive. My stand broke, so I'm holding it by my hand. So bear with me if you could.
No worries. And you're in San Francisco right now, which is cool.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the magic of the internet, right? In the background.
Exactly. I'm at Fenway right now.
I like that. That's good.
The tarp is on. There's no game, but the tarp is
Yeah,
on.
I see that.
So welcome to the show. We've spoken a number of times on different shows and stuff, and I would love for you to tell your story about your career in hockey and how kind of the evolution of your addiction and then into recovery and what you're doing
Sure,
today.
sure. It's I'll try to give you the brief rendition of it. Fortunately, I hadn't crossed the lines into the world of addiction, and while I was a hockey player back in the day. When I grew up, I'm a Needham kid. I grew up in Needham, Mass. Like you said, I went to Belmont Hill School in the ISL as well as Lawrence Academy. Played locally here, and was fortunate enough to, as a senior in high school, make the U.S. Olympic team in '84 and play with the Olympic team. Come back and play a few high school games after the Olympics, which is pretty cool for Lawrence Academy. And then it was off to the NHL, which was great. Unfortunately, I had some major injuries, knee surgeries from my first year on, which took me into my next life, so to speak. I played 8 years of pro hockey, many injuries, many surgeries. Started a new career in '92 after I really couldn't play anymore with shoulder surgeries and knee surgeries. And at that point in time, I started a title company. My dad was an attorney, and he used to do quite a few closings for the banks, and started a local title company, which was very successful. Life was good. 2 kids. Actually, kind of merged with First American with my title clients back in the early to mid 2000s, and again, life was good.
Right.
Until one day, it was around my 40th birthday. I was at my doctor's office getting a physical, my primary, and he was asking me. He was looking at the scars on my shoulders, and I'd known him for a long time. He was a local Needham doctor, and we're talking about some of the pain I was dealing with, shoulder, back pain, that type of stuff, and he told me he had something that could help me out with that. And,
Right.
At that point in time, I did know, but I didn't know, the world I was getting into. It started off with a prescription for Vicodin. It escalated to Percocet. And then, as you people probably know, your body builds up an immunity to the opiates, as far as, the dosage you're taking and the frequency you need to take it.
Right.
So it escalated. And, having spoken to him at that point in time, I'll never forget. And I think you remember this, Andy, back in the day, talking to him and saying, geez, I don't want to become a junkie, taking this
Right.
stuff. Said, and put myself in an early grave. And he said to me, if you don't manage the pain, you'll be in an early grave without it, and I'll never forget. That was my license to just friggin' go off the edge, so to speak. Because I
And
think
how long ago was this?
this is back in the 2004, 5 area, 4 or 5
Okay.
area, because I was born in '65, so it was right around my 40th birthday. So having said that, it just escalated, and like I had resentments against the doctor, but I had to own up to my own like responsibility. I was an adult. There was a certain point in time I knew this wasn't right, but I continued to take the pills because it took away a lot of issues that I had to deal with, whether it was stress, with kids and, business and life. It really made me feel good. I'll never forget that euphoric feeling of, of taking the oxys and stuff like that. And anyway, that was my introduction into the world of addiction. And I remember when I realized, I don't know, after a few months, I realized like I was a full blown addict. And I was driving home one night, and I remember I was in tears in my car, coming to the realization that like I was a drug addict, and I didn't know if I'd ever get back across the line to becoming a non-drug addict, because it was controlling my life. My life was becoming unmanageable, at that point in time.
And the industry you were in the title business after hockey, I think I remember you saying you were doing a lot of cocaine too, right?
Well, that was later on because,
Oh, okay.
because true addicts switch their addictions and they try everything. You know what I mean, to recover, except for like true recovery, so to speak. That was for me. That was the last. Before I could get well, I needed to pretty much go down every rung of the ladder, to my rock bottom situation. So that's how I became an opiate addict. That was in 2005. It took me 5 years of chronic relapsing and switching addictions and trying this and that and trying it my way, so to speak. I could talk hours about that. I'm not going to do that. I think anybody who struggled with addiction knows exactly what I'm talking about. God bless those people who could get it the first time. That wasn't me. It took me many years. It took me, a lot of creating a lot of wreckage and ruining relationships and jobs and businesses. And, like you said at the time, I had my own title company, but at the time I was working for a major title company, a Fortune 500 company, because like I said, I had become pretty successful in my business to the point where my clients were the top clients in the state as far as financing. And they came to me because they wanted to get their title insurance business and their title business. And those clients wouldn't go unless I would go, so to speak. And they didn't want to, cut me out of the action, so to speak, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So they came to me with an offer, with a job, sort of a contract to merge, bring my business over there and work for them as a representative, so to speak. But anyway, that was in 2005. And again, I don't think I have to go through the whole story, but it completely devastated my life. Took me to a point where in 2010, like you were talking about, my final days as an addict up until this point, because God willing, this summer I'll have 10 years in sobriety. In 2010 is when I got sober. But having said that, thank you. But having said that, my last harass, so to speak, I'd put a little bit of time together, Andy, and I was on Suboxone, I was on these other things. But in 2010, the wheels were coming off, and that's when I switched to what you were talking about, buying cocaine and living in a basement somewhere where my family didn't know where I was, and the only time I went out was every 2 days to get a couple of cases of beer and 2 8-balls, so to speak, and then I'd go right back to my cave for 2 days, and that lasted for I can't remember, but probably like a month or two before, I really wanted to kill myself. And I had those thoughts, and I had a plan because I didn't feel like I had an out, so to speak. I was hopeless. And, the only thing that kept me from doing it, because I was in so much emotional pain. And again, I didn't see an out. I didn't think I could get back across the line into any type of normalcy or, any type of relationship with my wife, kids, or the whole 9 yards. And the only thing I think that kept me from, to executing that plan was the fact that, I had 2 kids and and a wife, and I just couldn't leave that wreckage behind. I left so much wreckage through my addiction over those 5+ years that, that was just the one thing I couldn't pull the trigger on, thank God. And I'll never forget. I think I told you this story at that point in time. My wife was, she tried everything to get me well, but again, it had to be me. But in the final stages, it hit me like a cold slap in the face. I used to use the suicide card at the time as a way to manipulate her. I'm going to kill myself if you don't do this, or if you don't leave me alone, or this and that. And at that point in time, when I was actually really contemplating it and not using it as a card, I said that to her because she said, listen, I'm done. You know what I mean? I can't watch you die. I can't have your kids watch you die. Like, this is it. I'm taking the kids and, I'm filing for divorce and the whole 9 yards. And I told her I was going to commit suicide if she did that. And she said, you know what? She said, go ahead. She said, you're already dead. You're already dead to me. You're dead to your kids. And, I'll never forget the look in the eyes as the tears streamed down her face. And it was, like I said, it was a cold slap in the face, but it was a real wake-up call to where I was, because I knew this woman loved me. I knew I was the father of her children, and I knew she wanted me to be well. But I had taken her and that relationship and all relationships right to the end. It dragged them right to death's door with me. and I couldn't expect them to walk through it with me. But again, it was a wake up call. I think because at that point in time, I'll never forget thinking, well, first of all, my first thought being an addict and sick was like, I'll show her, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And I'm
Right.
going to put it back on her. But again, I couldn't do it for whatever reasons. I like to think it was my kids. Maybe I was afraid to do it. Maybe it was God, whatever it was, it didn't happen at that point in time. But, and then shortly thereafter, when I couldn't do it, I knew I had two choices. I needed to choose life or death, meaning
Mm-hmm.
I needed to try everything to get well, or I needed to die. You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
where I was. So, at that point in time, there was another gentleman who was a Bruins alumni, and he's a very well-known Bruin, who had come to me, who had a solution to the National Hockey League. I'm just trying to adjust my camera, sorry, with my hands. Can you guys see me okay there?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So he had come to me, and he had a solution with the National Hockey League had a program where they help guys with, addiction, mental illness, and their families. I didn't even know about it at the time. And being an alumni, I was called. I was eligible to get the help, and he had suggested I take it. And at the point in time, again, going down, kicking and screaming. I tried to drag that out. I don't think I need to go to. I was California for. They said 30 days at that time. And I said, yeah, that's a long time, you know what I mean, for me to commit because, I'm an addict and I don't want to do that. And, he said to me, what do you got to lose, man? He knew where I was. He came to see me. And he's like, what do you got to lose? It's basically what my wife said, like, you got nothing to lose by trying this. He said, look where you are.
Right.
You have nothing. You're basically dead to everybody, and whether he had talked to my wife, like, it's the second time I heard that, right?
Right.
So I did get the courage to finally accept the help through the National Hockey League, and talking to one of the gentlemen there who offered me a lifeline. I had to enter a detox clinic back here before I got in a plane to a place called the Canyon out in Malibu, and
Sounds rough.
yeah. So it was a nice place, but I'll tell you this: what I needed to do, the recovery part of it, like getting the help clinically. Even getting to some issues that I didn't even know bothered me in my childhood, and some traumas, or come to acceptance of things and creating a whole new person from scratch, basically. Like that's the program is what saved my life. The combinations were beautiful up there, but it was a therapist and the doctors and the group support and the foundation I built up there. Like I said, I didn't want to go out there for 3 days. After 30, I was begging to stay longer, and fortunately, they extended me where I was out there for 3 months almost. And at that point in time, again, I wanted more. And there was a sort of a progression system out there where I was, in the residential area, and then there was the aftercare area.
Right.
But, I knew I was getting well, and I knew I had a chance. I hadn't felt that in a long time. So I wanted more. And finally, at the last stage, I said, you know what, you're ready for the next step. And what I did from there is I came home to, and I went to a sober house back here, because again, it was advised to me, and I was willing to listen. And I entered a sober house out in North Attleboro. It was called the Association for Sober Living, and the director there is still one of my best friends, a guy named Mike Henson, to this day.
Wait, what was the name of the sober house?
Association for Sober Living in North Attleboro.
ASL.
Yeah, ASL.
Yeah, Big Mike.
Yeah, Big Mike is one of my best friends till this day.
Still going.
Yeah, he's the best. He really is, and I'm by there frequently to talk to him and to his residents now. So, having said that, I was willing. I thought that even after 3 months of the foundation and to getting to the point where I really felt like if you just dropped me back in the environment I came from, I didn't have that great of a chance, So it was advised to me to look into a sober house. I remember calling Mike from Malibu, and I remember meeting him in his office and him telling me how it was going to be, and not me telling him how it was going to be. And and he was very stern, and it was a very intense program, so to speak. But I stayed there for 6 months, and I think those steps saved my life, and it made me, it brought me to a point where I was able to connect back with my family. And, I started a hockey business.
DHA hockey.
Yeah, DHA hockey has been really great. But the most important thing I've done is is charitable work, and I've done it through DCR with the governor's office, inner city programs, and anti-bullying programs that we do with the Bruins alumni. Street hockey events with the kids and pizza, and we talk to the kids about life lessons and purpose and helping others, and more importantly, this bullying thing out there is it's an epidemic in its own right, and it's killing kids. So we try, we stand up and we fight against bullying, and we talk to kids about how making a positive difference not only in their own lives but in other people's lives is the greatest feeling you can ever have and the greatest thing you can ever do. And kids recognize that. One thing I share with them is I was fortunate to reach some of my dreams, meaning, and he talked about playing the Olympics in the National Hockey League. Scoring my first goal in the Olympics or the National Hockey League was a dream come true. It was an awesome feeling. But you know what? When I think about those feelings and the feelings where in recovery, where I've helped someone or helped a kid like I do, you know what I mean, and made a positive difference in their lives when they really needed help, it's the best feeling in the world. It's better than those feelings I just described in the Olympics and the National Hockey League. And we have the power to do that every day,
I think some of the ladies, there's two of them.
Yep.
May have questions for you. Thank you for telling the story, because people sometimes think, oh, well, you played pro hockey and everything's glamorous, but and had all the athletic accolades, but at the end of the day, you were kind of broken in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Yes, I think we all are. We all have issues, right? And we all have.
I have none.
Especially you, I was going to say.
Oh, I got tons of them. Believe me.
Exactly.
Zanson does too, right?
Yeah. Well, he's got
Forget
more than anybody. Yeah, he's one of my good buddies too. So I could say that about him. But having said that, I think we're all broken to some level, and we're always trying to get better as human beings and individuals. So. I think, doing the 12 steps and being in recovery, I think it's great for any human being, whether you're an addict or an alcoholic. Or
Agreed.
Not, totally.
Lady, what do you guys think? What do you think, Kimberly?
David, we met, if you recall, I think on CrossCheck, right? I think,
yes,
you were there that day.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
You too, Kimberly. Yeah.
I love your story, and it's an amazing story. I love stories that come from such a gritty background. When you went down and you went to the depths of that pain, and you rode the elevator all the way down, hit rock bottom, and then did the steps, or did it the right way. Personal opinion, you go to treatment, you stay as long as you can, stay in the bubble as long as you can. Then you go to sober living, you stay as long as you can. If you can get a good year in, you're in a far better place for being successful than if you just went to 30 days. And like you said, drop you back into the same environment, you're going to relapse. It's just 30 days isn't enough. Plus you're completely, like I said, in a bubble. So you can't really go out. You're not testing anything. That's why sober living is so important. But yeah, it was great story. Great story. Good to see you.
Thank you. You too, Kimberly. And what you said is so true. And, I wish I didn't have to go down to rock bottom, to death's door, but that's my story. And it's allowed me to help so many other people who have gotten to those depths, or, because again, I really feel like I was right at the choice between life and death. And I was fortunate because I was inches away from the grave, and it's just reality. But again, it's allowed me to help many other people. And, even through my mistakes for those 5 years, and like you say, doing it the right way, it was the only way I think that would have worked for me, for where I was at, was that commitment and that foundation that I built through, like you said, almost a year. And the last thing I did, when I moved out of the sober house after 6 months, so now I had 9 months in recovery, I moved in with 3 other guys from the sober house, you know what I mean, for almost a year. So we'd go to meetings. I had that support group. These are guys I built a relationship with, a trust and a friendship. So there was even another step I took, because again, I wanted to make sure and secure my life, because I knew where I came from and I couldn't go back. Because if I went back, I was a dead man. I was dead to everybody. And that was even more important to me myself, the carnage, the wreckage I created in my relationships. And I've been fortunate enough to build that back up and then some, with the
Right.
people that matter most to me. And it's a phenomenal thing to be able to do and to be purposeful and useful to the community and kids and all that. It's a dream come true.
Chris.
So
Yeah. So great story.
thank you.
I grew up with the Bruins. My family was friends with a couple of the players way back in the day. But my question to you is, do you feel that because you were in your 40s or just before your 40th, whatever, in your 40s, that you took that step to seek recovery? Do you feel that that played a really big part in, it sounds like you did it kind of the first try. Do you feel like that because of your maturity and because of your life, where it had already had been, as opposed to some of these kids that are like 18 to 25, where they don't have all those life experiences, do you think that it played a huge role in your path to recovery?
Well, I don't know. I can speak to this for myself that, I was anything but my first try. I had been to maybe 10 detoxes over the 5 years that I was out there. I had been to a couple other residential treatment centers. One was up in New Hampshire called the Plymouth House back in 2007. Yeah. So, but I wasn't ready to do what was necessary through the whole thing. I had to take it down to the bottom of the ladder, unfortunately. So it didn't serve me any better than if I was 18 years old or 15 or whatever, in my opinion, because I took it all the way to the bottom. I tried everything. I resisted everything that was offered to me, all the advice, all the help, and I had to do it my way right to the end until I was willing to surrender at death's door to, what needed to be. So I got my story is one of I hope nobody takes it that far. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Because if I was willing to listen earlier, I would have got it earlier. But it's just, and I feel fortunate nowadays, and I feel sorry for the people that I hurt for so long, but fortunate that I did take it that way, because I think it allows me to help people that have struggled for many years and relapsed many times. And, because I was able to turn it around, taking it to death's door. Had I stopped any sooner and got it the first time, there's sort of a trust in recovery when you've walked in my shoes, as I think we all know. And, when you're talking to people like that who are hopeless, and are spiritually bankrupt and have taken it to where I took it, like to know that I was there and was able to get into recovery and still in recovery and long-term recovery and be useful and purposeful, I think it gives them hope, but I was not a first timer. I was many, many tries, and, and I wouldn't advise my plan the first 5 years for anybody. I'd advise the end of my story, where I was willing to accept.
Hey, Dave, will you give your, I have two things for you. A, what would you say to someone out there who may be struggling right now, given we're in the COVID-19 world? What would you, are there any parting words of wisdom? And then I want you to give DAJ hockey address. And
Well, you know what? There's help available, and I've been, I stay connected all the time, and talking to residential treatment centers. And a good friend of mine, Timmy Rassis, owns the Washburn House in Worcester, and these places are taking precautions with COVID-19. But I wouldn't hesitate 1 minute if you have a problem reaching out to them and getting help, because I would suggest that you get into treatment right away. That's the only thing that's going to help you and save your life, and commit to what you can. Now, I was fortunate with the NHL to have a program available to me through them, but those same programs are available to anybody, even if you have Mass Health or whatever it is. Like, you can get into a great program like Timmy Rassis, and not to plug him, but I trust him and I trust his program at Washburn House. But he has a great program through the state that I think gives you 60 to 90 days in that. Then he has some great, sober homes for men and women that he can recommend. I'm sure you ladies can too, and you too, Andy. For that next step, I would suggest the same plan that I put into action, is available for them, and I wouldn't hesitate one moment, to get into and ask for help.
Excellent. And if somebody wants to reach out to you through DAJ.
Yeah, so dajhockey is .com. You can reach out to it at any point in time. At this point in time, no, we're not doing anything.
Of
Our
course.
spring clinics are closed and all that stuff, and which is fine. But we'll hopefully, when this thing lifts, we'll look at rescheduling. We're doing a lot out of the Canton Ice House right now, so those programs will be back up and running when it's
Camps
available.
and clinics and
Yeah, that type of stuff. So that will come, and then more importantly too, I'm looking forward to getting out there and running the anti-bullying programs in the middle schools and working with kids and in the inner cities and different communities. And again, that's all on hold until we're in uncharted waters here, until we can get to the other side of this virus.
Well, you are a good man, my friend. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. You are too, Andy, and you two ladies. Nice to see you again, and all the best to you. Stay safe.
Nice to see you, Dave. Take
Let's
care.
talk soon, and we'll have you back.
Okay. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right, Dave. Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Dave Jensen, everybody from San Francisco. What a great guy. Don't you think? I mean, just such a down to earth.
Yeah, very down to earth. Good story. Good story.
Yeah, I like him. Now we have our next guest on, which is Sadie Renero.
Oh, hi, everyone.
Hi, Sadie.
Hi.
Welcome. Chris is going to introduce you. She's going to do the honors.
Okay.
How about that, Chris?
Here's to me. No, just kidding. All right, let's welcome Sadie Renero.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that right? Sadie left Lebanon and moved to the States at age 20. She wrote a book, Not a Victim, which is about shedding light on women issues in the Middle East, but also to bring awareness to these issues is still happening all over the world. She is about bringing light to a generation that has been silenced. She grew up witnessing rape, abuse, suicide, drug overdoses, and was not allowed to question it. She's also been invited to join panels at colleges to discuss women issues and share her personal story. Wow. I can't wait to hear your story.
That's me.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I just want to say hi to David, who just left. And I mean, I got to the end of his story, but that's a courageous man right there.
Absolutely. Hi, Sadie.
Hi, Kimberly.
Tell us about your story, because it's from reading your bio, it sounds like, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there. So we'd love to hear about it and some of the things you've been dealing with and learn more about your book.
Yes. So, as you said, my name is Sadie, and I grew up in Lebanon, which is a very tiny country in the Middle East. It's very progressive on the outside. It is very, we have a lot of Muslims and Christians, so it doesn't really look like any other Arabic country. But at the heart of it, it's very Middle Eastern, and we do go by all these norms. And there's a lot of things that we just don't talk about. Inappropriate things that we just swipe under the rug. And mental health is one of them. Rape, anything that puts women in the front, they try not to really allow it. Now, this is changing a lot right now. Before the outbreak of COVID-19, there was a huge revolution happening in Lebanon for months about human rights and mainly about women issues and stuff. So there has been a few things are moving along that line. As for me and my generation, well, we witnessed a civil war for 15 years. And my generation in the 80s was very different than the one that is right now. So it was very hushed, those issues. And in 1989 is when the war broke out in my city. And we all went underground. And before that, we really had no idea in my region that there was a war happening for 15 years in Beirut, in the south, in the north. We really were very sheltered. My parents didn't let us feel anything that's happening outside our region. But I've always had this thing about me that was so different, that I questioned everything. Nothing made sense to me. And if it didn't, I was very outspoken, very loud. I wasn't really submissive in a way that I took everything I was supposed to do and did it because I was a good girl, right? So no, I wanted to question everything. When I was told, you don't answer men like that, I was like, well, why? You know?
Right.
So I've always had this in the back of my head that I was very different than a lot of girls around me. And then when we got out of the shelter, this is when everything hit hard. We weren't really asked if we were okay. Everybody just wanted to continue life normal. And okay, the war's over. Let's pick up where we left off and just be happy, right? The war is over. Well, that did not sit well with me and a lot of people my age. We had a lot of questions. We had a lot of issues. We saw a lot of things that like 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds even like shouldn't be seeing. There was a lot of anger of all of us. Violence, fights. I'd get in trouble all the time for fighting. My dad had to pick me up from all these police stations and from fighting and blood. And we just really didn't know how to deal with what was happening to us. And everybody resorted to self-medication, drugs, fights. By the age of 17, I had lost like 6, 7 of my friends to suicides, car accidents, fights, you name it, right?
A lot of trauma.
A lot of it. And we were just the bad kids because we didn't really stay in school like we're supposed to. We ran away from school multiple times, and we didn't understand really what's happening to us. Like, why so much violence? Why that gang mentality that every region we have to take care of our own, and if someone from another city come into our territory, what are you doing here? Like, we were very territorial. As for me, my mental health started taking a really, really bad turn. I suffered from a lot of depression. I had blackouts when I would get into really angry fits that I wouldn't even know what I did during those hours, and my family had to deal with it. Like my older sister was much older than me. She's like 14 years older. And at that time she had gone to Canada, but she was a very good girl. She did everything right. She did everything like she's supposed to. And my parents were older. And here comes this teenager who is like nothing else they've seen before. What are we gonna do with her?
Wild child.
Yeah, they really didn't know what to do with me. And, we did not live in poverty. My family was really good financially, right? I had a nice car. I had the best clothes in the world. So the question was, why? Why are you doing that? You had a perfect life. Why would you suffer from depression? Why would you attempt suicide? Why would you do this? And why would you do that? Your parents are giving you everything you want. And that also did a number on me because then my guilt was there, right? What was wrong with me? I should be very happy, right?
Why? It was on the outside, right? Not on the inside.
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't I be happy? I do have everything any other teenager is wishing for. I've asked for nothing that wasn't there the next day.
What do you think it was?
Yeah. What was missing?
Anger. I was angry. I was very, very angry. I was depressed. I wanted more than the government was giving us. I wanted a future that a lot of us wanted, but nothing really was there for us. They teach us about other countries when we're younger, assuming that we are going to immigrate. It is the talk of our generation. Where are you going to go after? So you're really living in a country where you know you really have no future, right?
So what did you do, Sadie? So what did you do? What did you end up doing?
I did everything I'm not supposed to. I fights, really violence, depression, very, very, very short fuse, bad temper. No one can really talk to me, but it was never treated. It was just me being a brat. I had someone tell me you should just kill yourself to rid your parents of your headache. Until now, I have people, I'm almost 40 with 2 kids and a life, and they still tell me, you were just you were just a bratty teenager. There was nothing wrong with you. You were just doing this for attention, right? Even now.
Don't you love that?
Even now, like here, or from people back home?
From people back home, from people who visit, like.
You challenge the norm, so they don't.
I did.
Right, so it becomes uncomfortable to people who you grew up with. You they're afraid, right? You scare them.
I did scare them a lot. Like, here comes a teenager who should look and act like a well-groomed Middle Eastern girl, yet I had tattoos, piercings, shaved head, fights, in the middle of the street. I would just get so angry if someone talked to me wrong, and I was just punching and fighting. I beat up my principal when I was 17.
Wow.
And I was super tiny, and I suffered from an eating disorder. So I had really no idea where that rage would come from to pin down a 6-foot man who was in the MP during the Civil War.
So how did you end up, did you channel all those feelings into your writing? Is that how you ended up?
Oh, my writing was the only thing I can do, really. And I didn't want to write in Arabic because if my parents can read it, we're also French educated. My parents can read French. So how am I going to write if my journals ever came out, everybody can read it, right? So I taught myself English. I was very connected to the language, and I started listening to Alanis Morissette, whom I was obsessed with, by the way. And
a lot of hate there, though. There was a lot of hate.
I love her. She's coming in contact.
And she was revolutionary in the 90s. So that fed into where I was at the time. Like, I was different, right? I had like a little cassette recorder, and whenever she comes on the radio, I would record, and then I would sit in my room and rewind and play and rewind and play until I was able to spell out whatever she was saying, and I would go translate it into French, and I started learning the words that way until and then I would write in French in my journal, translate it, and rip out the French pages and keep the English. And I was doing that at the age of like 11 and 12. I remember my first journal was after my mom had come from Canada. My sister had her son, and she brought me a journal, and I was like, so that's what American kids do.
Right.
They write in a fluffy journal.
And that, right?
So I started writing in English, and I noticed that I can express myself very well in a very foreign language to me that I only watched on TV. And everything we had was subtitled in Arabic, like translated. And I was never able to read fast enough in Arabic, and it would get me so frustrated. And then I would force myself to understand the English, and I really learned like super fast.
Okay. So now in your book, well, let me back up for a second. So how did that experience you had growing up? I mean, how is life for you today?
Well, after I've seen all of that, I've seen and survived 2 attempted suicide when I was a teenager. One, I was much younger, and my brother, Tony, my oldest brother, is actually the one who saved me. He's always been my rock, even until now. Like if I'm going through something, depressed or anything, and I don't want anyone to know, I really avoid talking to him, because the second he hears my voice, he knows that something's wrong right away. He can tell. So what I was really at my bedroom window all day, and if I have my room locked, that's good, because now I'm out of the way. I'm not causing trouble. I'm not fighting. I'm not angry. I'm not throwing stuff around the house. So she's quiet. Leave her alone, you know? But whatever was happening behind those doors was really, really ugly and messy. And I was left with it by myself. But my brother came at night and he was like, how long has she been in her room? And my mom said she's been there all day. And he broke it down, and I was literally inches away from my whole body being out of the window. He grabbed me by the neck and pulled me in. And I don't remember. I completely, my memory, like I have no memory of what I said to him, but I was holding my doll. I don't know why. I can't really tell you why, but I had this doll. Her name was Stephanie, and I had her since I was little. So I was holding her, and I was kept telling him that just let me go for a little bit. I'll come back. You know, I just want it to be quiet up here. I'll just jump and come back for a little bit. Like I really didn't even know what was going on. He slept in my bed holding me for like 3-4 days.
Oh, so he's been a real supportive
He
person for you.
He has been. And my last attempt, I was about 17, and my brother-in-law and my sister and their kids were in Lebanon. And that summer was really dark for me, but I never really told anyone. I felt like there was just a shadow following me everywhere, you know, like this, like a dementor. I don't know if you watch Harry Potter or read it. It's like someone just sucking the soul and the life out of me.
For Harry, I miss that. But
yeah, but it's just like, it's like there's this shadow sucking the life out of me, and I just decided to take all the pills that I had at once.
Oh, you did? Oh my God.
I did. Well, that's another thing, like a side issue with mental health, and in that part of the world, is it's a little different now, but at the time it was nothing really, you know. They don't really understand anything. They just drug you and send you home so you don't cause trouble. And the mentality was, yeah, you're just a brat acting up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening is my parents, who really didn't know what to do with me, sent me to all these doctors who were older Middle Eastern men that looked at me, one, as a woman, to be, you know, hysterical. We do things because we have hormones, right? And each one of them ended up giving me a drug, but none of them really should be working together. If you go to one doctor here, for example, they would never put these drugs together. But with me, there was no communication. So every time something didn't work, here, give her that pill. Here, give it. Oh, but she's not waking up to school. Give her this one. That'll wake her up. She's angry. Give her that one. That'll calm her down. She's not sleeping. Give her this. So I became an addict without really wanting to be an addict, you know? Even though there was all these drugs around me by everyone, I never really did do any of the like the hardcore drugs that were done on the street. It was handed to me by professionals. You know,
telling theme. That's what David was talking about earlier as well. So
I missed that, but yeah. So I was literally about 70 pounds because of my eating disorder, right? Like about 32 kilos. And now as an adult, when I look back and I see what they were giving me, and I was like, how was that okay, giving a kid that tiny that amount of medicine? No wonder why nothing was working. No wonder I was more depressed. No wonder I was more suicidal, you know?
When you
Absolutely. Did you, Sadie, how did you eventually put all of this into a book, right? Are you in this
I-
public?
Yes, some of it. I worked it out, fictionalized, and I talked about that. More so the suicide, really. For me, after I took all these pills, I wasn't thinking about the word suicide, to be honest with you. I was thinking about just sleeping. I just wanted it to all stop. In my head, I was like, I just want to be okay for just a little bit. You know, if I take a few more pills, and I started with like 3, 4, and I was like, okay, I'm still awake. This is still very loud. And despair is the worst. Like, I wish I was feeling pain. I wish I was feeling even depressed. I wish I was feeling anything. It was utter emptiness, and it was so ugly not to feel, right?
Do you think that you probably were feeling them, but you weren't allowed to express them, therefore you were unable to identify them?
I wish I can tell you all I wanted to do was just to rest. The only word that was in my head was just rest. You know, I just wanted everybody to stop. I wanted all this heaviness in my head to stop. I wanted to, if I don't feel anything, then I just want to sleep. How long that sleep was, I really didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. And I ended up taking all of them, and I slept almost like on and off. And my brother-in-law walked in, and he has been in Canada since he was 17. So his outlook on drugs and mental health was so different than your average or normal Middle Eastern man. He was more aware of it. So when he looked at me, I had friends over too, and they didn't even notice that I was going in and out of my bedroom, taking pills. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted everything to stop. And he looked at me from what they were telling me, and he said, "That kid's not sleeping." Yeah, he shook me, and I was like just gone. And everything became so chaotic. And you don't really call ambulances in Lebanon, you know. He put me in the car and he flew me to the hospital. And from what I heard is that they had to resuscitate me and pump my stomach. And I stayed there for a few days. And suicide in Lebanon is a crime against state and religion. So if you do commit suicide, whatever your religious belief is, you do not get the service, because that life is not yours that you took. You know what I mean? So let's say I committed suicide and I was Christian, I will not be allowed to be buried in the church, because that's a huge sin.
Is that men and women?
Men and anybody. If you can, that's why like churches usually, if you're friends with the family, they rule it different. If you know, like they will forge the papers that you didn't commit suicide, because then you will not be buried properly. So my parents told everybody that I had, you know, I was food poisoned. And also it's very embarrassing to tell people that, oh, my kid tried to commit suicide. It reflects on the parents. So it was a lot of people until now think I actually had food poisoning. That's why I spent all this time in the hospital. But also, if a teenager tries to commit suicide, the crime has to be pinned on someone by law. So when I woke up in the hospital, that you guys are gonna love this one, get a kick out of it. The psychiatrist who came in to talk to me when I was in the bed with all these machines, tubes, everything, he tells me, "Don't think you're gonna get away with this crap. Look what you did to your parents." Yeah,
That's awful.
yeah, no, that's a teenager who just went through something like this, more guilt on me. Look what I did to my parents. And he opened up the curtain, and there's this huge glass window. And I see my father on the floor sitting, my mom banging her head on the wall, on the ground, sitting on her purse, my siblings, and about 15 police officers investigating to pin this suicide on someone. Someone has to pay the price. Now, my family, didn't die, so there was no crime, but let's say I did, someone has to be held responsible. So my parents were afraid from every single angle. So I did not get any help after that. I refused to go to any psychiatrist. I still did get my pills, though. You can buy them at the pharmacy anywhere. You just pay and you go in. It's a tablet. You buy it and you leave. It didn't have to be a prescription. So I always had a way to get what I needed. Especially Xanax is like Tic Tacs in Lebanon. You really get it everywhere. And it was hushed. That's it. We moved past it. It was food poisoning, and we don't talk about it again.
When you moved to the States, did you move by yourself, or how
Yeah.
did you just picked up and went?
Well, not that simple. What happened to me is anger and depression and all of this kept getting worse and worse and worse. And when I got to be 20, I was very attached to my sister's kids from Canada. It's like that was kind of my lifeline. I hold on to the summer until her kids come. So they were kind of the only bright light in my life, especially that at that period. Now she had a baby. Her name is Angie. Now she's in college. But at the time she was a baby, and that year my sister wasn't able to go to Canada, and I got even a deeper depression that, now I don't get to see Angie or Elias or Aquilina. Like, what am I living for, right? I wait every summer to see them. But my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law had a different plan. So my brother-in-law tells my dad, why don't you give her to me?
Okay.
I think this is the only thing that will get this girl, one, out of jail or 6 feet under. Like, there's only one thing that can work at this time. Let her come over. And I was just so angry at the country. It just did not fit into any Middle Eastern norm. I was so different than everybody. I refused to be groomed to this perfect Middle Eastern girl who's supposed to clean and cook and have a pretty husband with money. I just didn't want that life.
There's a movie on Netflix that's a 4-part series called Unorthodox.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about a young Orthodox girl living in Brooklyn who escapes and moves to Germany for the very things that you're
She's
talking about.
Hasidic Jew.
Yes.
I know. I have it saved because my friend keep wanting me to watch it.
Yeah, it's spot on. Are these things that are covered in the book?
A lot of them, yes, but I fictionalized it, and I'll tell you why. So anyways, me leaving was the only solution that my family saw. So my brother-in-law yet again saves my life. He took me to Canada, and I thought I was only going for a month, but really they were planning on keeping me there. So when I landed in Canada, first when I was leaving, I had all my pills hidden in pockets of jeans, and I can't leave without my fix. My brother, the night before I left, opened my luggage, and he goes, take them all out. And I was like, take what? He was like, I know you have them all with you, and I know that you've been buying them and hoarding since you knew you were leaving. You need to empty you cannot go with this to your sister. She has a teenager. Aquilina at the time was about 12. He said, you cannot bring this to your sister. So I took everything out and I left. Now, I really thought I won't be able to live without anything, but my recovery was so different than everybody else I've ever encountered. Physical and emotional. The second that plane lifted, I felt like a completely different human being. I was happy. I felt like for the first time in my life, I was feeling normal things. Like I was sad that I'm leaving my family. I'm gonna miss them. Sad I'm leaving my brothers, you know. But I also felt relieved. Like I'm going to a life that I always imagined outside of here. And when I went to Canada, I saw the life that I used to see in movies. Like, oh my God, they really look like that. Or they have normal lives, and So I never had to go to any facility to recover. I never took any medication to recover. I just worked on myself, by myself. There were a few nights where I had fevers and I would throw up in the bathroom, but I didn't let anyone know in the household at my sister's. My niece saw me as a superhero, and really I decided to clean myself up and be the person that she thought I was. And she was 12 and she looked at me like, whoa, like I'm her idol. And in my head, and I was like, how can I be anybody's idol? I'm so broken. I don't even know where I start and where I begin. And there's this girl, this 12-year-old little girl who's looking at me like I am her entire world. So I
Couldn't
had
let her down.
I really couldn't. She saw me. I had to see, like, she wanted to dress like me. She wanted to be me. And she didn't know who I really was. She painted this image of her aunt in such a perfect way that I had to work harder on myself to be the person that she's always been seeing. And it happened. I just got better, and I haven't had a single pill since I was 20, and I'm almost 39 years old.
That's amazing. Great job. Very good job.
That's awesome.
Everyone's recovery looks different, right?
What?
It's okay. Everyone's recovery looks different. You get there how you get there,
Yeah, I did. And I worked on myself. Now, I'm not going to say that, the last 19 years, everything, you don't really recover from mental illness like that. Or if you suffer from depression, it never goes away.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Ongoing.
I fight my demons every single day. I learned this. I lived with this brain for 39 years. I know how I operate. I know what it takes. I can read the signs. I know when it is coming, and I have a very supportive husband. He can tell if I'm going off roads, and he anchors me and he brings me back in. So it hasn't been easy, but it's doable, and I'm doing it every day. I fight it.
Can you tell us if somebody wants to buy the book? This is great, and we could probably talk to you forever because your story is amazing. If somebody wants to buy the book, where can they go and find it?
My book. So what I did with my book to get you to where you can buy it, because not yet, but I wanted in my book to talk about all these issues and all these taboos that we went through as children of war that no one really wanted to talk about. This is why I call it a skip generation. They didn't want to deal with us. So what they did is they just swiped our issues under the rug and skipped us on to the next generation, the one who is not damaged, right? This one is pretty. So let's just focus on this one. This generation of teenagers who grew up after the war, we're just going to pretend they're not there. It's not pretty for the community, right? So that did not resonate well with me. And I've always known that I have this story in me that I needed to tell. And when I got to college and I was doing English literature, there was this ATP program in Bridgewater University where you can submit a project based on research. And I won the grant right away. And then I started my research and I started writing my book.
Okay.
And I wanted to bring in all these stories of all these teenagers that I've heard of, friends or not. I wanted to give them that voice. It still has not sat well with me that their story was never heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I fictionalized the truth. I gave a voice to this generation through a girl and a group of friends, and I kind of assigned each one of them a plot where I knew that happened, but was never
You did it channeled it through them.
I channeled it through my fiction.
Okay.
So I worked on my project, and I had a friend who I feel so ashamed to even forget her name, because this is how much, how sometimes the brain works. But that friend of mine was a party, and they got, they used to call it the devil's parties, because when you listen to heavy metal of stuff, that's the devil's music, and you're just like raising demons, basically. That's how they see you. So they riled them all up and got locked up. And my friend actually got raped in jail and ended up pregnant. And then she disappeared off the map. Her parents sent her to France. We never heard anything about her until today. Over all these years, I kind of forgot what her name is. That's it. She's gone. She's forgotten. She never existed. And that was never okay with me, even when I was little. And I wanted to talk about it, and they would tell me to keep my mouth shut. We don't talk about rape. We don't, God forbid, the community knows you're no longer a virgin. Who's gonna marry you, right? How?
Sadie, yeah, that's awful. Sadie, we've got people who want to know how to get your book. How can they find it?
So this is what I was getting at. My book was rejected for over 8 years. It is too controversial. So I had getting rejections over rejections, and I stepped away from the book for a little bit when I was teaching. But then I resigned from my teaching job, and I started focusing again only on my writing. And I finally got me a publisher. We've been talking back and forth, and I'm getting set up with an editor, a developmental editor right now, to kind of fluff it up. So I am not sure how long the process will be.
But it's in the works.
Oh, it is finally in the works professionally. Like, it's not just something on my laptop that I talk about. Even though when I was in college, that project and that book got me to so many conferences. I was on so many panels talking about those issues. I won the NCUR, which is the National Conference of Undergraduate Research, all the way in Utah and Weber University. And my college sent me there to talk about my project, about my book. A few chapters will published in academic journals, right? But then when I was done with college and went back to real life, as I call it, I was left to fend for myself, and I couldn't find anybody who would believe in the message that I'm trying to convey and take that journey with me. A lot of agents got to the rape scene and stopped, and I was like, this is very graphic, and this is a Middle Eastern novel. They just don't add up. Okay. But I stuck to my guns, and I refused to change it. I wrote that book so I can talk about this. I'm not going to change it. So finally, I found this amazing publisher, and herself, during the Civil War in 1991 or 1992, she was an American reporter in Lebanon after the Civil War. So she was already emotionally invested in that part of the world. And when she heard about my story, she wanted it, and now we're working on it. And I do have a website. And
yes, give your website.
Yes, and I do have my social media, so I keep people updated. Mainly, I post there my poetry, which is also based on that life. But now I actually have a real thing to tell them, which is about my publishing plan. And we're talking about translating it to multiple languages. So far, we have French, Arabic, and Spanish. After this is done, we're going to go and publish it in other languages.
I love it.
Yeah, it's finally out. It's finally going to do what it was meant to do.
Give your website address.
Yes. My website is Sadie Hadabranero.
Okay.
Which is SAIDEHARBRANERO.com. Yes.
And if somebody wants to reach out, learn more, that's where they can go.
Yes, my Instagram is also Sadie Hadabranero. But my Facebook, which I had it in, it was a really weird name, and Facebook's not letting me change it. But it's my inked parchment.
Okay.
I think you can also find it with Sadie H. Ranero, but Facebook is a very foreign land to me. I'm still learning.
Thank you so much for coming on. This is great, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I didn't just talk your ears off.
No.
You did a great job, Sadie. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a wonderful story, and we're looking forward to seeing the book.
Thank you so much, you guys. It really means the world to me.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, that's our show for the week. Is that our show for the week, Kimberly?
That is our show.
It's our show for today because we'll
be back live
on Friday.
On Friday. Michael will have us back.
9:30.
All right. We'll see you on Friday. Have a great couple of days, and we'll see you then.
Have a nice Passover.
You've been listening to The Map.